At this stage of the process, we are currently busy with reviewing. We must carefully address both the broad generalities and the highly specific technical details that are directly related to advancing this complex diplomatic process forward. Naturally, the countries in the region have significantly intensified their diplomatic efforts these days. You have witnessed a wide variety of continuous and ongoing diplomatic contacts from the regional countries and the immediate neighboring countries within the surrounding area. We are in the decision-making stage. There has been no change in the military exercises of the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The naval exercise of the Islamic Republic of Iran's army with China and Russia is an annual exercise that so far I think has been held 6 or 7 times in the northern Indian Ocean and will be conducted as scheduled. It will take place. Overall, we have certain measures in place. We are currently in the process of carefully reviewing various drafted options, which have been officially submitted and transmitted to the relevant decision-making bodies for their final approval. We firmly believe and anticipate that in the coming days, regarding the strategic countermeasures of the Islamic Republic of Iran, in direct response to this entirely illegal, completely unjustified and provocative act, and very mistaken action by the European Union, a decision will be made by the Europeans. France has no legal or moral standing to intervene in or comment on any diplomatic process or to express an opinion about it. Unfortunately, France played a very negative and inappropriate role regarding this same illegal resolution. The European Union played a destructive role. Therefore, we invite the French parties. They must undertake a series of comprehensive and decisive measures to restore their steadily diminishing and eroding credibility and standing. Furthermore, they should recognize and acknowledge the European Union as a significant global actor that could have truly played a constructive and highly beneficial role in complex international interactions. This is also one of the issues that will certainly be addressed in negotiations before any talks begin. It is natural that we do not announce the outcome in advance. The result will be determined within the framework and process of the negotiations. It's not that we decide the outcome beforehand and then enter the negotiation process. Exactly. Yesterday and today, all the ambassadors of European countries, the member states of the European Union that have embassies in Tehran, were summoned to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Islamic Republic of Iran's formal protest has been delivered to them in writing, but this is a minimal measure, as I mentioned before.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Esmaeil Baghaei addressed reporters at a press conference in Tehran on February 2nd, 2026, covering negotiations with the United States, naval drills with China and Russia, and Iran's response to the European Union's designation of the IRGC. In the briefing, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman laid out Tehran's stated positions on talks, naval drills, and the EU move. We at this stage are busy investigating both some of the detailed and general issues related to this diplomatic process, Baghaei said regarding potential Iran-U.S. talks, according to the press conference. Naturally, the regional countries have intensified their good offices these days. You witnessed various and continuous calls from the regional and neighboring countries. We are at the decision-making stage. Baghaei called it a decision-making stage, signaling Tehran says it is actively weighing whether to move forward. The The phrasing indicates active deliberation rather than a final decision on engagement with Washington. Baghaei said regional countries have been active in good offices, while separate reports describe Turkey and others as mediators. International reporting says a Turkey meeting is being arranged, with Steve Witkoff and Abbas Araghchi named as the lead figures. Baghei's statement that Iran is investigating both detailed and general issues suggests that Tehran is examining both the framework and specific terms of any potential engagement with the United States. The phrasing indicates active deliberation rather than a final decision. The reference to regional countries intensifying their good offices describes neighboring states working to facilitate dialogue. This diplomatic activity occurs against the backdrop of U.S. military positioning in the region and Iranian warnings about regional consequences of any attack. The statement does not commit Iran to any specific outcome or timeline, but frames the current moment as one of evaluation and potential movement. Whether this evaluation leads to formal talks depends on decisions yet to be made in Tehran and responses from Washington. His comments keep the door open and do not confirm specific timing, location, or participants. The flexibility in Baghaei's framing allows Tehran to maintain options while regional mediation continues. On the question of joint naval exercises with China and Russia, Baghaei said the drills are still expected to go ahead as scheduled despite current tensions. No change has occurred about the schedule of drills by the Iranian armed forces, he said, according to the press conference. Iranian Navy's drill with China and Russia is an annual war game that has so far 6 or 7 times been conducted in the north of the Indian Ocean and will be carried out as scheduled, Baghaei said. The statement indicates that the exercises, known as Marine Security Belt, remain on track, according to Tehran. He described the drills as recurring since 2019 and part of an established cycle of joint exercises. The continuation of scheduled exercises during the current crisis sends a signal about Iran's relationships with China and Russia. Public readouts from Beijing and Moscow on this specific round were not immediately cited in the reports we have seen. The exercises typically take place in the northern Indian Ocean and Gulf of Oman region. The Marine Security Belt exercises represent ongoing trilateral naval cooperation between Iran, China, and Russia. He described the drills as recurring since 2019 and part of an established cycle of joint exercises, making them an established element of the three countries' defense relationships, according to Baghaei. The timing of the exercises, reportedly scheduled for mid-February according to various reports, coincides with the current period of elevated U.S.-Iran tensions. The decision to proceed as scheduled may serve both practical and messaging purposes. From Iran's perspective, continuing scheduled exercises demonstrates that regional relationships and military cooperation proceed normally despite American pressure. The exercises also provide opportunities for coordination with two major powers that have different relationships with Washington. China and Russia have framed previous iterations of these exercises as focused on maritime security, counter-piracy, and search and rescue operations. Whether this framing applies to the current planned exercises has not been specified in recent official statements. After the EU listed the IRGC as a terrorist organization, Baghaei said Tehran is preparing reciprocal measures, according to international reporting. We are examining the entire set of measures, he said, according to the press conference. Various options have been drafted and sent to decision-making bodies for consideration. We believe that decisions regarding the Islamic Republic of Iran's reciprocal measures in response to this illegal, unacceptable, and very wrong action by the European Union will be made in the coming days. Baghaei said. The statement signals that Iran's response is imminent but has not yet been finalized. The characterization of the EU action as illegal, unacceptable, and very wrong reflects Tehran's strong objection to the designation. The IRGC plays a central role in Iran's security apparatus and economy, making its designation a significant point of contention. Iran has already summoned EU ambassadors and issued formal protest reports, say, while officials hint more steps are coming. Baghei's statement suggests additional responses are being considered beyond the initial diplomatic protests. Baghaei said Iran had summoned European ambassadors over the IRGC designation. Over yesterday and today, all European countries, member states of the European Union that have embassies in Tehran, were summoned to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he said, according to the press conference. The Islamic Republic of Iran's protest has been formally notified to them in writing, but this is a minimum measure, as I mentioned, Baghaei said. The characterization of the ambassador's summons as a minimum measure suggests that more significant responses are planned. The formal written protest represents standard diplomatic practice for expressing strong objection to another party's actions. The summoning of all EU member state ambassadors simultaneously underscores the seriousness with which Tehran views the designation. The statement that this is a minimum measure aligns with Baghei's earlier indication that additional reciprocal measures are being considered and will be announced in the coming days. Baghaei directed particular criticism at France regarding the EU designation of the IRGC. France doesn't have any legal or moral standing to intervene and comment on any diplomatic process, he said, according to the press conference. Unfortunately, France played a destructive role in relation to this illegal and highly inappropriate European Union resolution on IRGC, Baghaei said. Therefore, we invite the French parties to think a bit about restoring the credibility and declining status of the European Union as an actor that could have truly played a positive role in international interactions. Baghaei singled out France with harsh language, but he did not provide evidence for claims about who drove the EU move. The characterization of France as having played a destructive role represents strong diplomatic language from Tehran. The broader critique of the EU's declining status as a positive international actor reflects Iran's frustration with European policy and its preference for regional diplomatic engagement over European involvement in current tensions. Asked about Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium, Baghaei indicated this would be addressed in any negotiations rather than predetermined. This is also one of the issues that will naturally be resolved in a negotiation, he said. Before the negotiation takes place, we will not announce the result beforehand, Baghaei said, according to the press conference. The result will be achieved within the framework and process of the negotiation, not by determining the result beforehand and then entering the negotiation process. The statement frames Iran's enriched uranium stockpile as a negotiating matter rather than a precondition. This position differs from reported U.S. demands for cessation of enrichment as a starting point for talks. The IAEA has reported Iran's 60% stockpile is above 400 kilograms. Analysts warned that higher enrichment would raise proliferation concerns. The gap between U.S. demands and Iranian positions on this issue represents a central challenge for any negotiations. Baghei's statement about not announcing results beforehand reflects Iran's approach to potential negotiations. Tehran appears to insist that outcomes must emerge from talks rather than being dictated as preconditions. This position creates tension with reported U.S. demands, which have included cessation of uranium enrichment and other requirements. The gap between starting positions suggests that any negotiations would face significant challenges from the outset. Iranian media reported that President Masoud Pezeshkian authorized restarting nuclear talks within a nuclear-only framework, according to local outlets. This framing suggests Iran seeks to limit negotiating scope to nuclear issues and sanctions relief, excluding missiles and regional relationships. The terms acceptable to both parties remain unclear as diplomatic efforts continue. Whether the gaps between positions can be bridged depends on flexibility that neither side has yet demonstrated publicly. Baghaei said regional countries have been active in good offices, while separate reports describe Turkey and others as mediators. Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar have been identified in various reports as coordinating diplomatic initiatives. The regional approach to mediation reflects several factors: geographic proximity, established relationships with both Washington and Tehran, and direct stakes in preventing regional escalation. Gulf states in particular face risks from any conflict between the U.S. and Iran. Saudi officials said they will not allow their airspace to be used for strikes, and the UAE has reiterated its territory will not be used for hostile action, reports say. These positions may increase regional interest in diplomatic resolution. The intensification of regional diplomatic activity suggests that neighboring countries see both urgency and opportunity in the current moment. Whether their efforts can bridge the gaps between U.S. and Iranian positions remains to be seen. The diplomatic activity described by Baghaei occurs against the backdrop of significant U.S. military positioning in the region. Reuters reported the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Group has arrived in the U.S. Central Command region, and additional air defense systems are being deployed. The Wall Street Journal reports U.S. officials say more air defenses are needed before any strike to protect bases and partners. Those officials describe retaliation risk as a key constraint on timing and scale, according to the reporting. Trump told reporters the U.S. has the biggest, most powerful ships nearby and said he hopes for a deal, reports say. The pairing of military pressure with expressed preference for negotiation characterizes the current U.S. approach. From Tehran's perspective, as reflected in Baghei's statements and other Iranian official comments, the military positioning represents pressure that Iran rejects while remaining open to diplomatic engagement on its own terms. Baghei's press conference follows Supreme Leader Khamenei's warning that a U.S. attack could spark a regional war, according to Iranian state media coverage. The warning provides context for both Iranian deterrence messaging and diplomatic activity. We are not the initiators and do not want to attack any country, but the Iranian nation will strike a strong blow against anyone who attacks and threatens Iran, Khamenei said, according to state media. The statement combines defiance with framing Iran as responding to aggression rather than initiating conflict. Baghaei called it a decision-making stage, signaling Tehran says it is actively weighing whether to move forward on negotiations despite the heated rhetoric. The parallel tracks of deterrence messaging and diplomatic exploration characterize Iran's current approach. The combination of Khamenei's warnings and Baghei's diplomatic framing represents a standard approach, projecting strength while leaving room for negotiated outcomes. Whether this approach produces diplomatic progress depends on responses from Washington and regional mediators. Trump's public statements consistently pair military positioning with emphasis on negotiated outcomes. In a couple of days, hopefully we'll make a deal, Trump said, according to reported comments. If we don't make a deal, then we'll find out whether or not he was right. Reports describe Trump tying military pressure to demands on Iran's nuclear file and broader behavior. Exact terms remain disputed. The framing presents military positioning as leverage for negotiation rather than preparation for imminent conflict. The gap between U.S. demands and Iranian red lines presents challenges for any diplomatic resolution. Washington reportedly seeks comprehensive changes, while Tehran limits discussion to the nuclear file and sanctions relief, according to various reporting on both sides' positions. Whether the coercive approach produces diplomatic progress or hardens positions remains to be seen. Baghei's statement about being at the decision-making stage suggests Iran is actively evaluating its options in response to both pressure and diplomatic openings. Iran's domestic situation remains tense, according to international reporting, though details vary by source. How internal pressures affect Iranian negotiating positions is difficult to assess from outside. The negotiating positions of both sides suggest that even if talks proceed, reaching agreement will require significant compromise. The terms acceptable to both parties remain unclear as diplomatic efforts continue. Baghei's references to decisions coming in the coming days on EU response and being at the decision-making stage on U.S. talks suggests that the current period is one of active deliberation in Tehran. Multiple decisions appear to be pending simultaneously. The timeline for any potential U.S.-Iran talks remains uncertain. International reporting says a Turkey meeting is being arranged, but Baghei's framing indicates that Iran has not yet made final decisions about engagement. The EU response timeline appears shorter, with Baghaei indicating reciprocal measures will be decided in coming days. This suggests Iran is treating the IRGC designation as requiring more immediate response than the longer-term question of U.S. negotiations. For observers tracking the situation, the coming days may prove significant for understanding Iran's direction on multiple fronts. Whether Tehran moves toward engagement, escalation, or continued evaluation will shape the trajectory of regional tensions. His comments keep the door open and do not confirm specific timing, location, or participants for any U.S. talks. The flexibility in the statement allows Tehran to maintain options while continuing to evaluate the situation. The ultimate trajectory of the current crisis depends on decisions being made in Tehran, Washington, and regional capitals. Baghei's statements provide one window into Iranian deliberations, though final decisions have not yet been announced. Baghei's press conference reveals Iran managing multiple diplomatic and security tracks simultaneously. On U.S. negotiations, Tehran says it is at the decision-making stage with regional mediation active. On military exercises, drills with China and Russia are expected to proceed as scheduled. On the EU, reciprocal measures are imminent. The continuation of scheduled naval exercises with China and Russia during the current crisis sends signals about Iran's international relationships and its rejection of isolation. The trilateral cooperation represents an alternative framework to Western-dominated institutions. Iran's response to the EU designation reflects broader tensions with European countries that Tehran views as aligning with American pressure. Baghaei singled out France with harsh language, but he did not provide evidence for claims about who drove the EU move. The ultimate trajectory of the current crisis depends on decisions being made in Tehran, Washington, and regional capitals. Baghei's statements provide one window into Iranian deliberations, though final decisions have not yet been announced.